guess I wanted to start this conversation by asking you a question and also posing that question to everyone here. And that question is, what is your first memory of a farm?
My first memory is of my grandfather, actually. I grew up in Southern California, so they called it a ranch. But it was, my dad grew up on it, and his 4 older brothers. And I must have been Abraham's age, for really young. But my memory is of my grandfather's gopher control strategy. And, you know, it was just like it was a family farm, so they raised a couple beef every year. They weren't producing and selling lots of produce or anything like that. But I remember sitting on the sofa with my grandmother, looking out the sliding glass windows to the back lawn with my grandfather with ear protection on, and standing over a gopher hole with a shotgun, patiently. I don't know if that counts as a farm memory, but
that absolutely does. That's maybe
one of my earliest.
I guess my first memory of a farm was similar to you. I grew up in a more urban setting, and so I would categorize myself as a newbie as well if I were to put myself in any of the categories in the film. And this mic is amazing. It's like 3 feet from me, and I feel like it's like super hot. I grew up in Miami my first 7 years, and when I was 6, my mother decided that we should spend the summer in Connecticut, and it was a farmhouse that we rented, and I just remember it being like a really gross place. There was cows, a bunch of cows, and I wasn't supposed to go near them, and there was a lot of poop, and it smelled very bad, and that was just kind of like my first memory was just stay away from the cows, and it's kind of gross. And so Brandon, I wanted to talk about this incredible transition that you've gone through. We touch upon it in the film, but talk to me about this this journey that you've gone on. What were the moments, like maybe let's pick 3 pivotal moments for you as you've transitioned from sort of living in Southern California to today being one of the foremost young meatsmiths that I have met, and perhaps in the country, in the world.
Okay, good. That's a small enough group. I'm comfortable with that. I think it was one of the pivotal ones was we noticed a certain hypocrisy, to not put it lightly, in academia, and so that got us disillusioned about that a little bit, and it made us want to go the opposite direction to integrity and honesty. And I think it could have been anything, anything that was physical, where the limitations were real and not just abstract. And so I think another pivotal moment was when we actually decided to act on that. And I chose to wait until our honeymoon. And
was it a surprise?
It was actually Lauren's idea.
Okay.
It's all Lauren's idea. But I was actually kind of downcast the week of our wedding, and she's like, "What is wrong with you? Not the time for this." And I said, "I think I'm down about my job," and I was just working at Whole Foods actually as a way to pay my way through school. And our 2-week vacation for the honeymoon became my 2 weeks notice. I just didn't go back. And I think that was a pivotal time because we got home to Vashon, and I just went around looking for work. And it seemed like a fragile time, but it was also really a confidence-building experience to know that we could come to a new place, utterly unemployed, and really work hard, and that it would be okay. And so I got a job, several different jobs on the island, many of them all at once. And it wasn't until I got to working on a farm on Vashon, and then I worked there for exactly 2 years. And there were lots of galvanizing experiences there, most of them having to do with eating very well.
I remember you telling me a story about a piece of bread and olive oil.
Yeah, really simple. Didn't take much. But, you know, if you grow up on like chips and salsa, right, and Taco Bell, a little bit of bread and olive oil is, right, it's an extraordinary experience, especially if you're exhausted with the sauce of labor. And I remember that, at least where I was working, the goal for all of the food and the farming was not so that we could just eat healthy, you know, because that's what we ought, or not just so that we can be good stewards of the land and create a small economy because that's what we ought to do, but it was also because we could kind of have our cake and eat it too. Like, come to find out, when you want to make something taste like itself, taste the best that it can, make the best meal you can, all those other things are prerequisites to that, you know. And that was kind of a revelation, I think, that gradually set in over those 2 years.
And I guess my next question that I'll also pose to all of you is, what are your 3 sort of fondest memories of food? And just, I'll pose that to you as well.
When I first started feeding my sons blood sausage, and they really liked it, that was gratifying. Because kids don't lie.
No, they don't.
About your, to try to please you. So that was great. Anytime my children like something I make, that's a good meal.
And I must say, in the film, we show such a short portion of things. When I was there with Brandon, the moment after they shoot the pig, he came in with a knife and cuts the jugular, and then someone else comes in with a bowl and is stirring the blood, and they don't waste anything from the pig. It's quite a spiritual experience. And as I was sitting back watching the movie, I was thinking to myself how lucky that I was that the first pig that I saw slaughtered was a pig with you, and in that scenario, because that's so rare these days. Mm-hmm. So yeah, just thank you for including me in that.
Yeah, I didn't know that was your first.
Yeah, that was. I was trying to play it cool, like I'd been there 1,000 times. You know?
You did.
So, any other top food, blood sausage being appreciated by your kids being one of them?
You know, I have a good friend, I don't think he's here, but he has a very strange allergy to mammalian flesh, which is a thing that happens. And it's a major bummer. It means
is it from that tick bite?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we roasted a lamb once at the parish on Vashon, which we do every year, by the way. Sunday after Easter, you're all invited. We roast lamb or goats over open flame. And they had visited Vashon to see if it's a place they wanted to live. And they came to that event. And, you know, he loves mammal meat. It doesn't take away the desire. Steak and anything coming from a mammal. And he actually had some that day with his EpiPen at the ready. And he didn't have a reaction.
Did
it was
not?
Kind of like this magical day for him. And so that was an affirmation of their choice to move to our island. So that was a good one.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
And I guess, on my end, my favorite, this is actually the first time I've posed this question in an audience, and I'm also caught off guard by myself. My favorite food memories, one of the wonderful things, and this particular event, we weren't able to put together a food event beforehand, but a lot of these screenings we have, and so we get to, you know, just have such incredible local food, and that's been incredible. So I think there was a screening that we did of the first film I directed, which is called American Meat, and we did that at a place called the Dream Farm in Minnesota. And I guess every Saturday during the summertime, a very small window, they make pizza fresh on the farm in like a pizza oven. And I think it was when I was first, kind of falling in love with my wife Susan, and we were on this road trip doing these screenings, and the pizza, like, we didn't know, it was way out in rural Minnesota, and we didn't know if anyone was going to show up, and it almost was like Field of Dreams or something. Like, as soon as like 1 o'clock rolled around, it was just car after car, and the pizza was so fresh, and they threw it in the oven, and it was cooked in like 3 minutes with those super hot wood oven stoves. And I guess just that food was certainly a memory that I have, that just walking around the farm and eating the pizza and just sort of enjoying that with all the people there. That was certainly one of the great food moments. And I guess to switch gears and talk a little bit about some of the challenges. Just last night we were talking about, I was asking you about sort of the viability of some of the young farmers that you've gotten to know over the years. And I guess, what do you think are the reasons why so many of the first generation farmers aren't able to sort of make it last? And maybe just talk a little bit about why you feel that, that your farm and your family has been able to sustain, through a number of years now.
Yeah, I try to think about that a lot, and my answer keeps changing. But I think that for us, and I'm sure it's just a function of where we are at in our life as a family and as a business. Our business isn't necessarily, we don't sell produce from the farm. We kind of have a large backyard, is more how I consider it, and we raise animals as class curriculum for the classes that we offer, and we'll occasionally sell shares. And really, we provide an agricultural service of slaughter and butchery around the region, and have for, I think, about 8 years now. And the challenge, I think, has been to do the thing, not for the sake of the thing. And the thing about farming, I've found, is that the thing is not about farming for us. It kind of needs to have an end outside of itself. And the way that has kind of manifested in my experience, just as a family, is I get possessed by manias, by passions, and by convictions. Oh, and you put it well. You said you discover a connection, with the land, or in my case, you make bacon for the first time, or you raise and harvest your own rabbits in your backyard, and you get this connection that is meaningful. And it could be meaningful for many reasons. They're all subjective and unique to you, and that can provide some inspiration for a while. And but then I find that you really don't know what you love until you do it, even when you don't love it so much. And that has definitely been a trial by fire that we have experienced. And it gets hard. You set the standard so high in your amateurish zeal. You think, I really love traveling around the region, killing pigs for people the way they ought to be dispatched, and butchering them and curing them using traditional, non-wasteful means. I love this so much. I could do it forever, only, all the time.
Right.
But then, there are other demands on your time, and your family might grow. And the real test of what your passion might be, or where your convictions might be leading you, is if you stick with them, is the trial. And that was definitely an eye-opening experience for me, is when I kept at it, even when I did not like it. And it made me realize, hey, I must really like this.
Right.
Because I'm still doing it, And I think we put a lot of pressure on young people, particularly when you discover the connection as a young person and you catch the passion and you pursue something. And we're always kind of looking at the new generation like, what are you going to do? What is your passion? Find your passion and do it. You want to pick the thing to do for your living that you love. And I think especially when you're a young person, you might not have any idea what that is. And that will probably change. And I think that a beneficial, I guess, a grace that we experience as a result of particularly having a family is to keep doing that thing even if the passion seems to fizzle. And if you keep doing it, you realize that it actually didn't fizzle, it just morphed. It's changing and it's moving, and it's reordering itself. It has a different end. And for us, we're constantly trying to shape our agrarian service, our business, so that it is the servant of our family rather than the other way around, which is real easy to do when you're passionate about something and very conscientious and very motivated.
Absolutely.
You can immediately make yourself a slave to that thing. And oddly enough, I think that makes it temporary.
Yeah, it's interesting. As you were talking, I've recently been, I was telling, again, last night I was telling you that I've been deeply influenced by a book that by Dr. Stephen Covey, which is called 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And I read it, and one of the things he talks about in that book is how we all have these different centers in our life where you're either self-centered or you're family-centered or you're work-centered or you're spouse-centered. And that whenever you're focused on a center like that, it's deeply flawed, because if you are work-centered and you devote all of your life to your work, then suddenly if you're in the oil industry and that sort of no longer becomes viable, then your whole world falls apart. And so as you were talking, I was thinking a lot about how many of the new farmers become so farm-centered. It's all about the farm. It's all about the farm. And as that sort of mania takes root, it's almost like a spider that's like putting threads, but the web isn't being connected to a purpose. And so to me, I think that what you're talking about is your family lives deeply from principles. And so you have principles that you're working towards that are not quite related. I mean, that they're not, the farm is not the center of that. God's at the center of that, and whatever you choose as a family to specifically put there. And when you don't have that sort of end in and of itself as the goal, then actually the goal, it's sort of a Zen thing. Then the goal is accomplished when you're not sort of focused on the goal.
Yeah.
And so I guess that's a little bit of how I was feeling as you were talking about that. And I guess one of the things that I like to do, because actually this summer we've been going all around the country, and the whole point of it part of the point of it was that we're looking to, all of the screenings we're doing are with the farmers in the film. So we just came from Salem, Oregon, where we did a screening with Mickey Willenbring, who is the Native American and Puerto Rican woman who is in the film as she's calling to her sheep, and a military veteran. And so we're going around and doing the screenings with the farmers in the film to celebrate them and their work. And so one of the questions I always like to ask, because I was here filming quite a number of years ago, is just to tell me about how has the farm changed and how has it sort of progressed during the years since I've been here.
Yeah, well, we've honed it. It still has kind of a lot of arms. Farmstead Meatsmith does, and I hope that we have more clearly defined our ends so as to more better arrange our means. And that's really what's happened to the farm, I think, and to Farmstead Meatsmith, is trying to focus on those things that more efficiently accomplish, their telos, their basis, their reason for existing, rather than just for their own sake. So, for example, I had to buy a chainsaw. That was rough.
Why, are they faster?
A little bit. A little bit. And so that has happened in a lot of ways. You know, we're focusing more on the educational thing, because I find that as a processor or a harvester of livestock, that is very much a volume game. So if I'm going to win that one, I need to train 2 or 3 more guys and outfit 2 or 3 more trucks, and instead of doing 5 pigs a week, I need to do 25. And I don't really want to do that. You know, I don't want to increase the quantity, because there's an inherent degradation of quality to a degree in my field. And but I don't want to stop doing it. I want to keep the scale there. And so I kind of need to subsidize it in a way, which I know is probably really bad business move. But so we're creating more online educational opportunities, and we have using a lot of the custom processing or the livestock harvesting that I do as the medium, as the curriculum for that, because it's so incredibly diverse, and it's great material to teach. And so we have an online membership now that we launched last year, and really for the past, which is educational, that we update constantly, and really for the past 8 years, I feel like it's anyone who owns a small business or is in the private sector in any way knows exactly what this feels like, I think. But we reinvent the business just about every year. And we redo everything, almost. And that is when a lot of creativity comes, and it's usually out of necessity. We'll find, gee, no one's called to have their pigs harvested for quite a while. We need to generate income this month. And so I mean, we've had situations where we'll sit down and say, we must have $500 in 2 weeks. Very much must. And so we'll set that as a goal, and then we'll create something and put it out there. And so far, we've always reached that goal. And you know, the ability to do the scramble like that is it's possible. And it gets less and less possible, particularly the more mouths you have to feed. And so we're really trying to set up a little more security, which is a lot of what, you know, a lot of these young farmers in this film are going to be thinking about, and already are. You know, you get really concerned with the starting and finding the land and finding the capital. And then once you've started, you want to start thinking about security. So that's kind of where we're at right now, trying to establish that through the business.
Yeah, and this morning, in sort of like and I guess this will be the last question because we're almost out of time. You were talking to this online to 20 or 30 people that are in your community, and they were sort of asking you questions. And I guess talk to me about final question about your love of education and your love of teaching, and how that's manifested itself through in-person and online communications.
Yeah, and I mean, I can keep that short too in case anyone wants to toss a question in before we go, but for me, I cannot help it. I actually don't understand a thing unless I teach someone else what it is. And so I have to verbalize all the things that I learn. So really, anyone that signs up for a class or becomes a Meatsmith member is just doing me a big favor. Like great, now I can articulate it and understand what it is. So anything I learn, I teach. In college, I started teaching right away, and it was good for my grades.